Hi everybody at church. Namaste, it's Benjamin, and I'm logging on to talk a little bit about Mary Lourdes, which is a cathedral in France and a grotto in France that has been recommissioned through the Marian dispensation recently through me, through my holy orders. So I want to be in touch with you about this because when I stumble, and I stumble often under the circumstances. I'm involved in very aggressive litigation, unfortunately for me, and I advance my own personal security by engaging that litigation, but I also protect people in my family and my friends and people in church additionally. I stumble frequently, lacking basic essentials like a driver's license and access to food a lot of the time because of what's going on with the alleged pandemic and problems, health problems, personal security problems arising from lack, systemic privations. Well, all that needs to be rectified. One way to do that is to reach out to people in church. Another way to do it is to protect your home through prayer and by enthroning your home. And I recommend that people do that to the extent possible. What you don't want to fall into, I got to remove Christina Aguilera from my desktop. She has to go where M&M is. You're going to go into that folder, my friend, and then these people are going to go into that folder too. What you don't want to do is rely solely or expect, if you're, for instance, an attorney assisting me or trying to, or you have a peripheral case, or you're a church member who cares and has issues that can be resolved through the resolution of my problem. What you don't want to do, and I also speak to members of my family who still care but have been hobbled really with regard to efficacy and providing assistance during this time in which the nasty people in government are doing their thing. You don't want to rely solely on a home enthronement, because home enthronement can take some time. It can take many cycles. And so by enthronement, I mean the safety and security of your house, not being harassed by your neighbors, not being harassed by census takers, police, all of that. A sufficient prayer will help clean out your environment. But you don't want to put someone in the middle of nowhere and basically dump that person, wittingly or otherwise, and then say, and throw in your home for your own personal security and to advance your cause, because that it takes many cycles and that person will die many times internally. So I've been experiencing that, unfortunately. A lot of repeated need to do soul retrieval that is not natural. But if you're experiencing that where you have mini nervous breakdowns throughout the day, for instance, which I know people, that's been going on for years, you want to, after you have whatever that chakral crash is, that occurs, is pray over it and invite Mary and the healing angels to come in and annihilate the memory and the notion that that's acceptable. Because unfortunately, as we study God and we study the Calvinists online as part of my mission in Holy Orders to understand Mother and Elizabeth Clare Prophet and how Mark and Elizabeth's soteriology differs from the rest of Christianity, we look at God. Well, one question, and the Jews have this question too, those who survived the Shoah, for instance, have the question, where is God? And my presentation to people is, it's great in church if you pray continuously to God, you have an upbeat approach. Erin Prophet teaches about that too. Her experience in IM for a while was that everybody constantly wanted to be happy and maintain high spirits. That's absolutely the right approach, but it's a challenge. I think that it's not helpful, and some people in church disagree. And I have friends who take different approaches, and periodically I will take a different approach to it too, and sort of can all of my naysaying, but I naysay periodically because I don't want people to lose faith when they hit roadblocks. So, in other words, one says be happy all the time, but if you cannot be happy all the time, or you cannot maintain that spirit constantly, then you need to find an alternative. In my experience, admitting that the system fails is a way to move past it. If you can admit to it and own the reality that God doesn't always work out in the moment, sole reliance on just saying, I have faith in God, you actually have to do the chakral work. So, yeah, God is there if you do the chakral work. But my theory is, as someone who's been studying Christianity and world religions for a long time, is that you have to really invite God in, and He has to know where you are. It's not that He doesn't care, or she, however you want to say it. God, I don't have a problem with Goddess either, but God, I use shorthand. You, and there's a difference too, and it's important. And Mary is different from Jesus as well, and that's important to remember too. So different resources, but don't lose hope because it appears that God is dumping you out. It's really that He can't find you because of the fallen. That's not taught that frequently. That's kind of part of this new Lotus dispensation that I'm trying to, I call it the Blue Lotus dispensation. It's a ray emanating from an etheric retreat over Arizona, with which I'm affiliated. That is John the Beloved's retreat. It's a ray. That's an actual, that's in the extant Dharma, extant sutra. It's an extant, it's an extant retreat. I didn't make it up. I have ideas about where other retreats should be, but I make sure to mark them because I think that I'm in and what, I don't know, the Jews had a second temple. Paul was a second temple Jew. Hilarion was a second temple Jew. And when they say temple, they also mean that internally to world religions, including Judaism, I believe that if you've read a book called The Chosen, it's about a man who was excluded from basically all of life by his father to teach him some sort of lesson, and I don't remember all the details, but part of the point in that parable is that, and it works that way in law firms too, if you are not part of the full conversation, sometimes you have a better grasp on certain components of the conversation that is a long-standing conversation because you have fresh eyes. They do that in law firms. They'll say, well, you're going to be a different chair, so I'll give you information. The one lawyer will hand you information after having read and understood components of it, and then ask for a fresh insight. So that's kind of what's going on at Summit with my holy orders, I believe, because as I stated, I don't take the online lessons, not the technical lessons over the computer for Keepers of the Flame. I do directly through Mother. They're both valid paths, but they're different paths. The reason I state that is I do think that God doesn't make it here in time, which is why there was the Shoah, which is why people's beloved friends die, which is why we lose our animals. There are problems that are not endorsed by God. It's that He's not here in time because of the nature of creation and also because of the fallen. So the fallen are a problem. So to fight the fallen, you want to make sure that you're reaching out the right way to individuals. Home enthronement is one way to protect your safety, and people have said to me repeatedly over the course of the last several years, keep enthroning your home. And you do have to keep enthroning your home because it is continuously valuable. But as I said, to say to someone, always enthrone, and then never provide any sort of intervention is not fair to the person who is undergoing soul death and has to daily redo the chakras. Not simply waking up in the morning and doing your morning meditation to prepare for the day, which is also a way of realigning your chakras, but serious problems that look like MS and look like epilepsy and all of that because of the what the fallen have done to people, to the light bearers as they reside within their homes, taking away their driver's licenses, cutting off access to food by way of the lie about corona, all of that. It's a problem. So, serious problem, so it has to be overcome in the moment. This has all been a long-winded introduction to the value of Mary and working with Mary. I don't know what your experience is with Mary. I know that we all pray to Mary, but some individuals have direct are able to communicate directly with Mary. And I find that Mary talks to me with a relative degree of frequency. And recently, so does Anne, Mary's mother, and also the angels. Mary has a league of angels who are sisters, or I'm not sure. I don't know how to describe it beyond the fact that Mary is really the pure Omega, and then there's a league around her where periodically they're more accessible, or they have different personalities and different qualities. So I've been guided by Mary and an angel who has Marian qualities in recent weeks. And earlier today, Anne talked to me about the problems that I'm encountering while isolated here in the middle of Maine, which I hate. It's people come to me and say how wonderful the work is periodically, but I think that they miss out on the fact, because I have to maintain a persona, that it's painful. And I fear that other people are going through it and that it's not properly remedied. And really, to balance that for someone else, including by doing remote healing work, is essential. So definitely keep in touch with your friends and your spouse, your twin flame, if you're fortunate enough to have your twin flame in embodiment, or to keep in touch with your twin flame wherever your twin flame is located. But and talk to me today about Lourdes. This was after I made a discovery yesterday with regard to a grotto that I've actually visited in the Germain region of France. Jurassic Park, the film about the dinosaurs, was named after the Germain. It's the Jurassic period has something to do with the Germain. I'm not a scientist or geologist, so I don't know. Yeah, the Germain is a beautiful expanse of hilly countryside with 15th century monasteries sort of crumbling away into the hills. Not all of them in a state of disrepair, but it has a very, I would say, medieval, antique quality to it. It's breathtakingly beautiful. Of course, in the United States, we don't see anything to do with the 15th century here. So I visited a grotto several years ago, and it was a Marian grotto. It's in the middle of the countryside. It's not even really marked very well, but you walk up into the woods, if you know where it is, there's a Stations of the Cross in the middle of the woods, and there's a cave and a kind of an altar, and Mary has appeared to people at that spot. So this angel was excited, and Mary said to me she was pleased that I was able to find that for her, because it's what she wanted for her I don't want to say life, for her world. I think that's probably the better word. And there's a chateau associated with it as well, which is something to think about investing in. But yeah, in the Germain region. Now, we'll have to look at a map of France to figure it all out again. But, there are important connections between the Arthurian legacy and Normandy and so on, and we'll look at it. I'll try to figure out what's going on historically. And I've posted a couple of shields, pieces of heraldry, and so forth to my board. But yeah, so this morning after I had a problem with the isolation, Anne said to me, she doesn't speak as frequently as Mary does, but she comes periodically, and said, yeah, take a look at Lourdes, and really take a look at it too. One of the things to remember that I've learned, I'm a fairly educated guy, and I like to consider myself to be advanced intellectually, but it's taken me over 10 years to figure out the system, and I still haven't grasped it. There are tens of thousands of ways to fall if you're a human being or forced to occupy a human body. And I don't want to get off topic. Lord, I'll explain. Remind me to talk to you about the angelic nature of being, because certain people have a harder time by virtue of, not lack of experience, but by virtue of where they come from in the universe. And I'll get into that separately. But Lord, right, if you want to work with etheric retreats or physical retreats, one lesson that, I mean, as I said, I'm still grasping all of these lessons, which I think that many of you have mastered already, is to stay in the moment until the moment is resolved. So when Anne comes to you and says, look at Lord, it's not just look at Lord and then move on to your next thing. It's they want to heal in the moment by having you sit and concentrate on the location, the people who will be occupying the location with you or visiting the location with you, the importance of where your twin flame fits into all of that, of course, and so forth, and what you're using for ID. All of that plays into it, and it's complicated. But don't pop out of the moment. I have to remind myself of that. And I get calls from friends who say, "Are you holding the balance?" In the moment, it's like, well, no, because there are 90 other things going on with people threatening me and loss that's been unresolved. Like, I really should have my dog back at this point. There's no dog here. There's no cat here yet. No breaks. That was another thing that came up when I studied the issue, is that eventually, even if you can be, a slave, like an actual slave, and need a break. No one should be a slave ever. But the system, you have to remind the system, and someone in my position, it doesn't understand that work does not follow a 40-hour week with breaks and weekends and visiting with friends and driving around in cars. It doesn't understand that without you explaining it to God and the Elohim. It doesn't see it. It just sees someone who's working, and it doesn't see the fact that it is indentured servitude or a form of debt bondage until you explain it. So that's an issue too, like no breaks. It's like an actual thing. You think that it just doesn't care, but the system has to know. So it came, that hit my desk. But anyway, so studying with Anne, I say go for it. If it makes you feel better in the moment. Mary and the angels and Anne, they don't lead me astray. And as a matter of fact, and Mother's this way too, they provide very valuable information about the case. And when I looked into it, it's funny, because I looked into it, I'm like, wow, I'm getting messages from Mary. And if you're a technical person and you kind of can't deal with the fact or don't believe it, if you dig a little bit, it'll say it'll say system security kind of over and over again. But it really is Mary. System security, when she says, and she said to me before, Ben, your problem is Togus. Your mission is shutting down Togus and resolving the problem with people threatening you as you pursue litigation, beneficial litigation that is going to free the world from corruption, for instance. We'll always have corruption, but it is international human rights litigation. It's Mary who comes to me and says, this is the problem. And she says, I know this is the problem, is that place needs to shut down and they need to take that sheriff out of there. The dirty cop who's showing up to say, don't be suicidal, while he's causing the suicidality, inviting people to go and kill themselves at Togus. That's the situation that we're dealing with. So he has no right to open his mouth about anything ever. And certainly not to cause a problem and then offer to rectify it by killing somebody. Basically, that's what you're looking at in Maine right now. Togus is a dirty, and I know because I was partially raised there, because I had, unfortunately for me, family members who worked at the place. Don't ask. Let's a show a conversation, and I will make a video about the mini Holocaust in Maine. Certainly, I'm just being honest. Transmute the negativity if you don't want to hear it, but I mean, honesty helps, because it helps position you in space-time so that you can actually see the lay of the land. I think it's fair to say that. But I think it's important to say that it's Mary who said that that's your mission, is that problem. So when resolving it, it's got to be resolved through that. And then in my case, I'm trying to work with the DOJ, because they came up with a program for people who are so crime afflicted that eventually they've had a pet killed by criminals. And unfortunately, I'm one of those people who has lost animals to crime. You know, I tried to explain it to a lesser evolved person, and what their approach is, well, what did you do to cause the problem? And that's like saying the person who was raped asked for it. So I'm one of those people, and animals are not disposable. If you have a relationship with an animal, it's vital that that relationship is restored. So that's another problem. But Lord, if we pray through this situation, I believe that Anne will give us the dispensation to get through this safely. The other place, first of all, if you're not familiar with Anne, I'll explain to you that they don't know much about Anne. They know much more about Mary than they do about Anne. And Anne is very mysterious in art as well. And you can see her, I believe, in Orthodox, I'm sure in Orthodox, iconographic paintings, the gold they look like gold foil paintings. And you'll see Mary. And there are a couple where it's Anne. Actually, I know Anne is in Orthodox Russian or Greek or Coptic. Anne is holding Mary, and in some of them, and you'll see like a little Mary holding up a flower, and sometimes Anne is holding a finger up to Mary too, like cautioning Mary. And it's just a gesture. It's just a finger teaching and instructing Mary as Mary holds up a flower or looks up at Anne. And in other representations, you have the Mary holding Jesus, so you have Anne holding Mary holding Jesus in certain of the rarer ones. We'll have to look those up. But in Renaissance art, I'll find them for you. And it's interesting because Anne is often pictured offering a piece of fruit to Jesus in several of the masters' paintings. And it's just a very simple gesture, and it's some sort of fruit. It could be a pomegranate, I'm not really sure what it is, or it's just a piece of fruit. So the grandmother in our system, and in the Christian system, is an important figure as well, because to talk to Jesus, it's great to go through Mary as the mother, is what I was taught growing up as a kid, was sort of a superstitious grandmother who was Roman Catholic, but you could tell was sort of influenced by the Sicilian old world magic, which is really my background. Before CUT, that's really what I was, as an old world magic practitioner, and still am, largely. But yeah, to talk to Jesus, you want to talk to Mary. But to talk to Mary, sometimes you have to go to Anne. And Anne periodically will instruct Jesus privately, because the mother doesn't always have perspective. Even Mary has a fixed understanding of Jesus, and periodically Anne wants to take care of her daughter, but also her grandson, and Anne has information in that piece of fruit, that mysterious piece of fruit, to offer to Jesus that is not offered by Mary. So grandmothers are important. That's part of the message, I believe. Lord. There are films about it. I think with Lord, we're talking about Saint Bernadette, to whom Mary appeared. And one of the saints, and I think she's the saint who is still preserved. Her body didn't decompose, and you can see her, as I stated in another video, you can see her basically on display in a funerary case. And someone said that there's actually a thin layer of wax over her face, but you can still see her face as if she had just died. Let me see. Yeah, lots of fallen. Also, those when you hear the voices of the fallen, if you've done sufficient prayer, it's really your own phone giving you feedback internally, unfortunately, and you have to continuously pray and pray and pray until you have the release. Just ask, the masters and the angels to help you find the closing point. It is Bernadette. And I'm going to read a little bit for you, and I'm going to read directly from lordfrance.org. Lourdes-France.org. She's a French saint. And this will link you to the sanctuary, okay? You can go and bathe there. There are healing waters there. So at the ranch we have a healing waters project. There are healing waters at Lourdes too, where you can go and actually immerse yourself and drink the water, and people claim to have been cured. And I can get online for you, and if you want, and I can get healing water sent to me and redistributed if you'd like to have your own. I shouldn't laugh about it because I think that it's a powerful. I think water is powerful. I think even the water from here possibly could have healing properties. I've thought about bottling it myself and still might. But it probably shouldn't be like standard city Randolph water. But let's take a look at this. Going to the baths, there'll be information about it. There's separate drinking fountains, okay? So when you drink, you don't have to drink people's bath water. There are fountains, a certain way to pass through the grotto, Eucharistic procession, the Marian procession. There's a whole breakdown here. You can go to confession, which I used to do as a Catholic. I'm not in the habit of going to confession anymore. And let me read it. All that we know of the apparitions in the message of Lourdes came to us from Bernadette. Okay, so she was the gatekeeper. She alone saw the lady, and all. She alone saw the lady, and all depends on her testimony. Who is she then? 3 periods can be distinguished in her life: the obscurity of her childhood, okay, a public life, in quotes, at the time of the apparitions and of giving testimony. Finally, a hidden life as religious at Nevers. And before the apparitions, I say Nevers, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's spelled like Nevers, and my French, I would say it's Nevers. Unless it's Nevers, I don't think that S is, I think the S is silent. But when one describes the apparitions, Bernadette is often presented as a poor, frail, and ignorant girl living in miserable conditions in Cachot, but it was not always thus. When she was born on 7th January 1944 at the Boli Mill, she was the first child and heiress of François Soubirous and Louise Castereau, who married for love. Bernadette grew up in a close-knit family in which she was cherished. 10 years of happiness in the decisive early years of her childhood made her strong and surprisingly balanced. So, okay as a kid, apparently. The descent into the unhappiness which followed could not erase this human richness. Bernadette, at 14 years of age, stood only 1 meter 40-something tall, suffered from bouts of asthma. She had a lively, spontaneous, and generous nature. She was witty and incapable of deception. She was proud, which didn't escape Mother Vazu and Nevers, who described her as having a closed character, very touchy. Okay, Bernadette's faults distressed her, and she fought them with energy, a strong personality, but unsophisticated. They're kind of breaking down in their sentence structure here. No school for Bernadette. She had to help her aunt, Bernard. No catechism. Her memory refused to retain the abstract phrases. At 14, she couldn't read or write, and she suffered at being excluded. Then she reacted. In September 1857, she was sent to Bartres. On the 21st of January 1858, she returned to Lourdes. She wanted to make her first communion. This she did on the 3rd of June 1958. The public life, this is how the apparitions took place. In the midst of ordinary daily tasks, going to search for firewood, Bernadette was confronted by a mystery, a sound like a gust of wind, a light, a presence. Her reaction, she showed her common sense and remarkable discernment. Believing herself mistaken, she used all her human resources. She looked, she blinked, she tried to understand. At last she turned to her companions to check their impressions. Did you see anything? She turned then to God. She took up her rosary. She turned to the church and took advice in confessing to Father Pomian. I saw something white in the form of a lady. That's the full sentence. Questioned by the commissioner Jacomet, she replied with a confidence and prudence and a firmness which was surprising in a young, uneducated girl. Caro, I didn't say the Holy Virgin. Monsieur, you've changed it all. She reported what she had seen with a detachment, an astonishing freedom. I'm charged with telling you, not with making you believe. I'm charged with telling you, not with making you believe. She didn't necessarily say that it was the Holy Virgin at that point. Her accounts of the apparitions were precise, never adding or retracting anything. At one time, taken aback by the severity of Father Peramal, she added a word. Father, the lady always asks for a chapel, even a very small one. Okay, that was her entreaty. In his pastoral letter on the apparitions, Monseigneur Laurence emphasized the simplicity, the candor, the modesty of this child. She recounts it without affectation, with a touching innocence, and to all the questions put to her, without hesitation, she gave clear, precise responses, impressed with a strong conviction. Unaffected both by threats and attempts to bribe her with advantageous offers, Bernadette's sincerity is irrefutable. She has not wanted to make a mistake, but has she herself been mistaken, victim of a hallucination? The bishop wondered. He recalled her calmness, her good sense, the absence in her of any exaltation, and also the fact that the apparitions did not depend on Bernadette. They happened without Bernadette expecting them, and in the fortnight twice, when Bernadette went to the grotto, the lady was not there. Bernadette had to respond to the curious, to admirers, journalists, and others. To appear before civil and religious commissions, she found herself thrown into the glare of the news. A media storm battered her, says media storm in quotes. She needed patience and humor to stand firm in this storm and to preserve the purity of her testimony. She accepted no payment. I want to remain poor. I question that, but when I hear Buddhists going around with poverty vows and so forth, I have a problem incorporating that, knowing that people live in debt bondage. I personally have a problem glorifying poverty. I question when I see someone saying that a mendicant stance is part of their holy mission. I wonder. She needed audience patience, actually. I read that sentence. She did not bless the rosaries thrust at her. I don't wear a stole. She did not sell medals. I'm not a merchant, and faced with images of herself costing 10 souls. 10 souls, that's all I'm worth. Okay? That's what it says. In these circumstances, life in the cachot was no longer possible. It was necessary to protect Bernadette. Father Peramal and the Mayor Laggards were in agreement. Bernadette would be admitted as a sick, poor person to the hospice managed by the Sisters of Nevers. She arrived there on the 15th of July, 1860. At 16, she learned to read and write. One can still see today at the Bart Church the writing practice, strokes she made. Later, she wrote often to her family and even to the Pope. She visited her parents who had been rehoused in the paternal home. She looked after the sick, but above all, she was seeking her vocation. Good for nothing and without a dowry, how was she to become a religious? At last, she joined the Sisters of Nevers because they did not try to attract me. From that time on, a truth impressed itself within her spirit. My mission in Lourdes is finished. Now she had to withdraw in order to give all the space to Mary. And then the hidden life at Nevers. Let me check 1 second. I know it's annoying when I look at pronunciation because I think people often forget in the moment, but I don't believe that. It says American pronunciation. I wonder if we have. How it sounds in French. You're going to say nevers in English. Okay. Right. I know that guy too. Okay, wait. Okay, getting back to it. The hidden life at Nevers. She herself used this expression, I came here to hide myself. In Lourdes, she was Bernadette, the visionary. Okay? In Nevers, she became Sister Marie Bernard, who would be saint. This is, you can tell by the way the English is coming across that someone went through, probably this was translated by a couple of different people, if you know how that goes. One often hears about the severity of her superiors towards her, but it has to be understood that she was a unique case. She had to be shielded from curiosity to be protected, and the community also had to be protected. Bernadette gave her account of the apparitions before the assembled community on the day after she arrived. Thereafter it was not to be spoken of. She was kept in the mother house where she loved to care for the sick. On the day of her profession, no particular office or work had been prepared for her. The bishop declared that her work would be the work of prayer. Pray for sinners, the ladies had said. She remained faithful to this. My weapons, she wrote to the Pope, are prayer and sacrifice. Her own illness made her a regular patient in the infirmary, and then there were endless parlor visits. These poor bishops, they do better to stay at home. Lourdes was a long way off. She would never return to the grotto, but every day she made her pilgrimage in spirit. She did not speak of Lourdes, she lived its message. You will become the first to live the message, said her confessor father, Deuce, to her, and in fact, after having been assistant infirmarian, okay, she entered bit by bit into sickness herself. She did her work in this, accepting all crosses for sinners in an act of perfect love. After all, they are our brothers. During long sleepless nights, uniting herself with the masses celebrated throughout the world, she offered herself as a living crucified in the tremendous combat between light and darkness, bound with Mary to the mystery of the redemption, eyes fixed on the crucifix. That is where I find my strength. She died at Nevers on 16th April 1879 at age 35. The church proclaimed her a saint on the 8th of December 1933. So the determinative process in her instance took 2154 years, not for having been chosen for the apparitions, but for the way in which she responded to that grace. That's similar to what they said about Francisco. There's wording in there. Often the church will say it's not the apparitions, but the holiness and the sanctity of the life, or the response, or the grace, which I'll look at. I'm not sure that I agree with that entirely. I think there's something to be said about apparitions, which there are different categories. Some apparitions are external visions. They're called locutions, where you hear voices and so forth. And of course, you can be a holy person, a saint, be on your way to saving the world through a Marian visitation. And unfortunately, if you tell someone that you hear voices in Maine, you'll be institutionalized. So that's the situation. And I'm not joking around about the consequences of that either. It's what I said before about togas. So holy people are at risk for as long as we have a secular government, a non-functioning secular government at the very least. So, and then there's a video here. She's quite pretty. She looks kind of like a cross between. She looks like Uziel to me, and a cross between a runway model and Susie Sue a little bit. If you look at this link, I'll put the link beneath the video when I post the video. You can be in constant contact with them. You can petition online, be part of the Notre Dame family. You can request a mass. Okay, you can light a candle, and then we have a special location where you can protect minors and vulnerable people as well through the blessings and the bestowal of the sanctuary. Let's see if I can get more information. But right, so you be in it, process the fact that you are at that location, envision yourself fully at that location, do chakra testing and balancing, and make sure that you're keeping out any sort of demonic force. as well. We did a prayer over St. Peter's in Rome a couple of months ago, and I'm still working on that because it's such a huge place. And if you've never seen inside of St. Peter's, I recommend that people take a look at that as well, because it's enormous, and it's not only an enormous cathedral, but there are many churches within, and places to sit and worship within this one enormous dome-like building, and mini chapels, and it's amazing. It's amazing. And the art, of course, is astounding. But yeah, and you'll see, statuary from the period and all of that. But right, so I'm not sure what the health charter is. It just has to do with visiting the sanctuary and the fundamentals, they call it. There's a medical bureau of the sanctuary, which I don't know what that is, but there's miraculous healings, a link, and then signs of Lord, and the message. Let's see what miraculous healings are. Lord has dealt with more than 7,000 cases of unexplained cures. Okay? And I'll give you a couple. 70 cases of unexplained cures have been recognized as miraculous by the church at this time. 70 cases. So there are a lot of French nationals. And all I will say is, it's interesting. It'll go through and it'll say the names of the cured individual. They're all French, of course. Joachim de Hant is number 7, recognized as having been miraculously cured on April 25th, 1908. Sister Julienne, Sister Josephine Marie, born Anne Jourdain, from whatever part of France, date of recognition 10th of October 1908. Clementine Trouvé, now Sister Agnès Marie, from a department in France, date of recognition 6th of June 1908, miraculously healed. Rose Francois from Paris, miraculously healed on the 6th of June 1908. It lists 70 of them. And it doesn't give information beyond the name. It doesn't give the health, it doesn't say what the problem was. Light a candle, request a mass. So really interesting, and I'm trying to see if I can get pictures of the actual place, but you can look online, and of course, and see the place. So something about thinking, something to consider. You can experience Holy Awakened Lord. And of course it's sad because the art depicts Jesus being flogged. But Saint Bernadette's relics are coming here or have been here this year in the United States. There's a tour, or was a tour. You can visit virtually. Let me tell you, and actually there's a 360-degree tour as well. Wow. Wow. You hear that? The birds. It'll take you down like you're looking at a satellite. From a satellite, it'll take you from a bird's eye perspective down into the courtyard. And the opening shot is, you can see the cars driving up, and it's that time elapse effect where the lights leave a streak. It's streaks and bands of light in front of the cathedral out in the middle, and it's a lot bigger than you'd think. And let me okay, to rotate, it'll say it in French too. Okay, so click on the dialog box. Okay, so go directly here. I'm gonna actually make sure we link through to this by saving it so that I can show you underneath this video. Open, please. Okay, and then what is it? Okay, file save. Okay, I don't know what that is. Okay, then Let's get back to it if we can. Okay. Envolez-vous. Okay. And then, I'm not sure what that is in the air. There's something suspended in the air that looks like a moon, but it's a place to click. And there's a symbol. I have no idea what that is at all. I don't know what that is. It looks like a headless person, but I don't know what it is. It looks like a moon. Okay, and then vers la Vierge couronnée. Okay, so these are places to park and stuff, and there are many buildings, many outbuildings. It looks like, I don't know what it looks like. It looks like an I mean, it kind of in a way it looks like an installation. You can tell it's religious, but it looks a little bit like a military installation, more because of the expanse of the outbuildings. But there are many. I didn't realize that at all. I thought it would just be a cathedral, but they must be lodgements of some kind and administrative buildings, but it's significant. You know, like maybe we can get jobs there, sort of thing. Okay. Pretty decent, huh? Oh, I want to keep going though. It's just going to give me a 360 from here. Okay, you can do a 360. And what it'll do to help you navigate when you get here, because I'm figuring it out right now, you can actually navigate into it. But what you want to do when the tabs pop up on the screen, in the middle of the screen, it'll say vers, which means towards, and it'll say what it is. You want to click on or around that particular marker, and it'll let you basically traverse wherever you want to go. Now I can get through the whole thing. But yeah, I can't believe how big the place is. I had no clue. Parts of it kind of look ranch-like, and parts of it actually look like togas. Unfortunately, if you look at my board and you see what that dump looks like. Okay, and there's Mary, crowned, gold crown. It's amazing kind of, I don't know that that's Gothic. I really think, well, it has Gothic influences. These must have been built, some of these were obviously built in the 1900s. We'll have to take a look at, I'll take a look at that and help you, but it's like tons of places to stay, and just amazing. They're calling this l'Hospitalité Notre-Dame de Lourdes, which I don't think means hospital. Calvaire des Bretons. It's so much bigger. It's like a whole village. It's so much bigger than I thought it was. It's just unbelievable. Right, there, la Chapelle des Confessions, so where you go to confess. L'Esplanade. Yeah, you can click basically wherever you want. I wonder who this guy is. Vers la crypte et la basilique de l'Immaculée Conception. These are amazing. I want to climb that staircase. There's a spiral staircase on the side of that thing made out of stone. These are incredible. You just have to check it out. You have to check it out. Amazing. and pray. And the other thing I recommend, because I had such a response to it as a member of CUT, a specific response to it, where I think it is personal to all of us, I would recommend, in conjunction with studying Bernadette, the Francisco canonization process, which I discussed in the video, in which I propose that someone somewhere consider whether or not Elizabeth Clare Prophet qualifies for sainthood in the view of the Roman Catholic Church, because I think it's overdue for consideration. I'm not saying that it's not controversial, but it's kind of an obvious omission. And to leave her out of the dialogue when we have Catholic saints among our ascended masters, although we're not Roman Catholic, I think is folly. And I think not to have the conversation that her revelations were divine and that she healed people. Of course, she says that she doesn't heal, God heals, but through her as the channel, there's enough documentation of Mother having healed for someone to consider. Not to mention the fact that Mary came to visit Mother at La Tourelle. The new Hail Mary was handed to Elizabeth Clare Prophet in La Tourelle, Colorado in the 70s. I know that, and I think the church ought to know it. But this is really amazing. Okay, La Vierge Coronée is basically what I want to hear. The crowned virgin, okay? Let me give you another point about Mother, too. I hope I'm not overplaying my hand, but I don't think I am, because I don't know, I work for the church. I love the church, and I'm part of the dispensation too. One of the things I was saying before about Mary having insight into the case, it's true. Like, and it's pretty much infallible when she says something. But when she said to me about the problem, um, the togus problem, Mother also has said things to me before where I speak in terms of wills manifesting among the individual members of the church, which to me is remarkable as a chaplain, and something that I think you have to be in church for a while, and you have to be studying for a while, or at least have some sort of life experience enabling it to understand that you can care about someone within the church very much, and periodically there'll be a moment where everything has to restabilize in that relationship, because they require something from the relationship, or they require your assistance, or would benefit from your assistance based upon their individual will. And I've heard Mother say stuff to me about her will having executed certain components of, for instance, things that have befallen me in my life, which I wouldn't have necessarily picked out without her saying, without knowing in advance. So all of these horrible things have befallen me as a result of crime, long stories, very long interwoven stories, not insurmountable problems, but very serious problems. And why would she pick this one moment instead of these other moments? But I've seen that happen before. I've seen mothers say things to me before where she said, I'm done with that, and that'll clear because I can't. She just signed off on it. Something to do with something abusive that one of my, and I don't do therapy and don't support therapy because it's precursory to psychiatric torture, unfortunately, in this country. But yeah, at some point, one of the therapists that I was forced to see in Portland said something to me and made me do something with regard to a medical test that mother just couldn't handle it anymore. But there are so many moments of that you wouldn't even believe it, But why that? It's just that one moment where she just said no and signed it. So God bless Elizabeth Clare Prophet, really. And but yeah, I just can't believe how big this place is. And look, there's this building too, which is clearly modern because it's sort of semi-octagonal and it looks like a dorm or kind of like a little bit of a college, really. But then all these older buildings too. It's just amazing. And of course the groundskeeping is just stunning with the trees and all. Okay, so there's a sign. There's like a bus stop. More monuments. Okay, so just incredible. Check it out. And let me see if I can find a little bit about Bernadette. So they say about, is that really her? Is that really her? Wow. America Needs Fatima. There's a picture of Bernadette. She looks like a wax statue. She doesn't look like a corpse. Okay. She looks like a wax statue. She's in a funerary case wherever it's located. I don't know if it's actually at. It says America Needs Fatima, but that's actually Lourdes because that's Bernadette. There's an interesting. I'll save it for you guys. The body of Saint Bernadette, and there's a Catholic Pilgrims of Mary and Jesus, and there's a body there, and she looks identical to. You wouldn't say it as a body. She looks like she's asleep. She has flowers on her head. She's in a nun's habit. Okay, she doesn't look dead. She looks like she's sleeping. And then when you look at the other cases, when you look at the funerary, whatever that's called, where you can go and view the body, it's the same. It's unchanged. It's been 140 years since this Catholic nun died, but her body is said to be mysteriously unchanged. 140 years. So she's still just laying there as if she's at a wake. (2019) It's the same picture from the from the 1800s. It's the same quality. It's not, nothing has changed at all. I'm going to save this for us. I'm not trying to be morbid, And who's this? But that doesn't look like the same person. It's not the same clothes in this photograph. If that's her, why does it say? This one is a body without a habit, so I don't know who that is. And with white hair, but also unpreserved. But that one looks like it's the layer of wax. In that picture, she doesn't look like Bernadette, but it looks like an undecomposed body. It looks like a sleeping body. white hair with a layer of wax, and it's in a funerary display, but I don't know if that's really her. Why? What did they do? Change it out, or you can't really tell if it's her or not. But when she's in the nun's habit, it totally looks. You totally buy that it is. Okay. Mary said that they received the Togus problem preserved. I'm not sure. It's going to clear, but I don't know. It's just slated to clear. That's all I know. Who actually has to execute that is, presumably me, but I'm not sure where I would be in order to actually get it done. What is this? Okay, this is best preserved mummies, and she does not look like a mummy. This person looks like a mummy. The one that I'm looking at right now definitely looks like a mummy. I mean, you can tell that this is a dead person. Okay, they're saying it about Saint Victoria, who's in Rome, Italy, and she looks dead but not decomposed. And now they're saying incorruptibility showing various degrees of success. But Bernadette, how to tell if your saint is incorrupt? Does not look dead, and she does not look decomposed in any event. Now they're saying the not quite incorruptible Saint Bernadette of Lourdes, Nevers, France, Atlas Obscura. I don't know what that means, but let's take a look and see if there's maybe another opinion. Perhaps the most beautiful of preserved saints with a little help from Paris. The undeniably beautiful 130-year-old body of Bernadette Soubirous is displayed in a purpose-built crystal coffin housed in a chapel at the abbey where she served as a nun. Her uncannily lifelike visage, clad in nun's robes, is one of the most commonly used illustrations of incorruptible saints whose bodies never decay. After her death, she was exhumed no less than 3 times and found to be perfectly intact at each, which makes it seem strange that the lovely face and hands that are so famous are actually made of wax. Saint Bernadette began her life relatively recently by saintly standards, growing up in Victorian-era France. The eldest daughter in a poor family, she struggled with illness for her whole life. Her fame began at age 14 in Lourdes with a series of sightings of a young woman taken to be Virgin Mary, now known as Our Lady of Lourdes. When, as a side note from someone who's read, at Fatima, there was an angel who appeared to the children first. And the angel, not only did they see Mary, but they saw an angel who showed up to announce Mary. She's known as the Angel of Portugal. I proposed it to the church as an addition to the Ascended Masters list. I think she's known, I think I call her the Angel of Portugal because it's an apparition. She's an apparition, or he's an apparition, I don't know. But the angel said, prepare because Mary is coming to talk to you, basically. So her fame began at age 14 in Lourdes with a series of sightings of a young woman taken to be Virgin Mary. The apparition appeared 18 separate times, occasionally giving the girl small bits of encouragement, and most famously pointing her to the source of the healing spring waters there. Let me read. Okay, if you want a free book, you can download Atlas Obscura. And these are super cynical, and I'm not even going to read them, but they're funny. And then, so let me see. Okay, wait. To live as Christ. So cutting past that Atlas Obscura part because I lost it on the screen. Now I look at a quote-unquote doctor saying this is not a natural phenomenon. Over the course of the next 46 years, St. Bernadette's body was exhumed no less than 3 times. And so they buried her, dug her up, buried her, dug her up. At the first exhumation, it was quickly evident that a miracle had taken place. St. Bernadette's skin tone was perfectly natural. Okay, the mouth was open slightly, and it can be seen that the teeth were still in place. Although the rosary in her hands had decayed, showing rust and corrosion in some spots, the virginal hands that still grasped it were perfect. The sisters present thoroughly washed the body and clothed it in a new habit before placing it in an efficiently sealed double casket. The second exhumation in 1919 showed no further evidence of decomposition. Though her hands and face had become somewhat discolored due to the well-intended washing given by the nuns 10 years prior, a worker in wax was commissioned to create a light wax mask of St. Bernadette's hands and face. It was feared that although the body was preserved, the blackish tinge to the face and the sunken eyes and nose would make an unpleasant impression on the public. Well, I can't blame them for that. That brings us to 1946 and the final disturbing of St. Bernadette's resting place. One of the doctors overseeing the final exhumation, Dr. Comte, writes, "From this examination I concluded the body of the Venerable Bernadette is intact, the skeleton is complete, the muscles have atrophied but are well preserved, only the skin, which is shriveled, seems to have suffered from the effects of the damp." And it goes on, "This is truly the body of Bernadette, lifelike in her attitude of meditation and prayer." She kind of looks like a dude there. This is a living photograph of her. And I'm going to save it because I think the habit's pretty cool. And I'll post it. "It seems only right that our Lord would preserve perfectly those ears which heard the message of Lord, and the lips which repeated the lady's name to Father Perimal, I am the Immaculate Conception. This is the heart, too, which bore so much love for Jesus Christ, the Virgin Mary, and sinners. There is a profound understanding in this heart which would one day write, I was nothing, and of this nothing God made something great. In Holy Communion I am heart to heart with Jesus. How sublime is my destiny. Yes, how very sublime is the destiny of any Catholic who embraces the call of Christ to be a light shining in the darkness of whatever century he finds himself in, and how sublime the destiny of those who find healing in the arms of she who is the Immaculate Conception." And then I'm quoting from live. I can't even read that. Christ.com. live-christ.com or live-christ.com. Okay, and then there were apparitions at a place called I'll bookmark this too because it's another site and they have some sort of magical waterfall at this other site. Okay, well, I've been going at this for over an hour, and I think it's enough information so that we can at least get on the road to understanding the Lord. And my other references for this would be the Germain, which I mentioned, and St. Peter, St. Peter's Cathedral in Rome. But you want to pray for the protection of souls entering and leaving that location, and ensure that all of those locations are properly taken in by the church. You don't want there to be wayward religious or communities who are not fully integrated to be running the place, because it will minimize our effort to free the light bearers from American tyranny. You want to make sure, world tyranny, truly. You just want to make sure that those places are properly closed when they need to be and recommissioned. Pray for that. Pray for that additionally. But Lord, I've prayed for Lord. I've left requests for healing and I think it works. I've also left requests at the Basilica in Canada to Anne, which is called Saint Anne of Beaupré, Saint Anne de Beaupré, and at that location you can see where people have left like crutches and prescription bottles, like their medicine and their wheelchairs and stuff there at St. Anne's, and I'll link you to that as well. I hope this has been interesting. It certainly interests me. Whether or not she's made of wax is another question. Namaste. I will talk to you folks later, and thank you for permitting me to introduce these topics. Okay, peace.